I'm saying that Jobava London has been designed to truly dismantle beginners simply because, according to my statistics, if you're playing this opening properly, you're gonna get a +1 advantage by move 10. So, in today's video, we're gonna continue the speedrun. Let's not waste any more time and dive right into the games. Men of Culture, here we meet again. Getting a wide game against an opponent in the mid 1000s who decides to step in the center. So whenever you see the move pawn to d5 in the first 2 to 3 moves, that is going to be enabling the Jobava London. And it's already going to be a Jobava where my opponent has decided to lock in the light squared bishop. So if they go bishop outside the pawn chain, we start with f3 right away, threatening to both expand in the center while also keeping ideas to attack on the king side. But on e6, we just do bishop f4. Pretty much getting the starting position for our opening. Now, we do get to see the pin. So this is actually very common and fairly annoying for the most Jobava London beginners. And okay, my opponent decides to take, which is gonna take us to what I like to call the Colosseum pawn structure. It's a very nice pawn structure, and due to the messed up nature of it, I call it the Colosseum. Colosseum is also messed up, but it's, I would say, pretty nice still. Okay, guys, Colosseum, not bad. Colosseum, if you go there, I'd say pretty nice. Never been there, but you know, it's Google Maps. Okay, bishop d7. My opponent is putting the knight on a somewhat suboptimal square and then goes for the bishop. I mean, we're just gonna go for normal development. And the plan is to go castle short and then trade both c-pawns. So we're gonna try to play for double c-pawn. Double c-pawn push. Okay, f6. So that's a signal he may be willing to do some nonsense. I don't think we should really be that afraid of it. If I actually want to be super precise, I could even delay castling and just do c4 right away. Considering that this pawn push does look a little bit scary, but it's not. It's actually not. So I'm gonna be castling just to show you if he pushes, it's no biggie. And okay, this position you're gonna get in most of your games, or at least this setup. So it doesn't really matter that much how opponent is playing, as long as you have these double pawns. These are natural squares for white pieces. Now it's important to remember the pawn play. So always remember the theory until you castle and then have an idea of the pawn play. And that's pretty much gonna be enough for your games. I mean, only 8 moves of theory. Come on, guys, you can do better. You can do at least like a 10 move knowledge. I believe in you. Oops. Okay, c4. I don't know what just happened, but c4. With simple idea to take and then strike again. So what we're trying to do is exchange these pawns, which are side pawns, for the enemy central pawns. So we play c4 and then, yeah, I think just take and then c4 yet again, no matter how he recaptures. Okay, I lied. It matters how he recaptures, because when they do take with the knight, targeting the bishop, it's important to keep the bishop. So I will play simple move. Alternatively, in this position, because his bishop is on d7, obstructing the queen, I can start with bishop d6. So this would actually be optimal move. Just keep the bishop, so achieve strategic goal, not allow his knight to capture our bishop while keeping the tempo. So bishop g3 was just strategic move, but no tempo. So we kind of prioritize the tempo when it comes to these things. And now I'm gonna play c5, c4 like I promised before. So c4, take, the double c4 is on the board. Normally when you apply this plan, the position is so good, it's close to +1 on the computer. We'll check it after the game and see, but from my experience, This is already as good as having an extra pawn. And okay, knight b6. Knight b6, how do we play this? We have many moves. So, okay, we can already say that white is better because we have bishop pair, plus we have one more pawn in the center than our opponent. So this is center of the board. We have a pawn. Black doesn't. We're better simply because of that. Now I could consider a move like queen c2, trying to put pressure in his camp. I could also consider a move like c5, just direct pawn play. Yeah, let's do simple move, just development with a tempo. So attacking h7, probably provoking further weakenings. And it's gonna be very interesting if he plays g6 actually. So please feel free to pause the video and try to calculate a little bit what is the best answer on pawn to g6. Because I think it was very interesting to take. Because after pawn takes, queen takes, king h8, you have at least a perpetual, but normally there is more. And I was inclined to go knight to g5, threatening mate on h7 and f7, and if he takes, bishop e5 was leading to funny checkmate. I will show you after the game. But bishop c8, okay, he attacks the bishop. Now, I could go ahead and just take the free pawn, which is best move, but for the sake of the video, we're not gonna punish every single blunder that he makes. I'm gonna give him time to recover, okay? He has to defend the pawn. I don't need these tricks to pretty much win games, just to exploit random mistakes. You should in your own games, but for the sake of extracting the most educational value out of these videos, I'm trying to show you how to play in general if they don't blunder. And we do that by going for pawn play normally. Okay, opponent goes queen e7. I don't know how I can give him a hint that there is a free pawn. He doesn't see it, it's okay. It's okay. What is actually so instructive about this pawn structure that we're playing is black pretty much has no moves. And a lot of the times you're gonna be able to simply wait and they will go in pure collapse. I'm gonna show you. Let's put rook on open file. He probably will go e5 just out of desperation sooner or later, but I can actually take twice. It's okay. He woke up. Somebody called him, he woke up. h6. Now that move weakens the square. Could always consider using it. Could also consider a knight maneuver. But I think we're gonna go for the pawn play with c5. So I think I'm gonna go c5, targeting the knight, and then that is also pretty much creating a permanently weak square on d6. So I can put the bishop over there, but I can also try to maneuver the knight. And notice that d6 is a weak square because we can fight for it with our own pawn and it cannot be protected by any black pawns. So I can neutralize it. Now I can play e4. Notice that I put the rook on b1 specifically to avoid his knight from taking our bishop. And yeah, I think we just expand with the pawn and then we put bishop on d6. And we're gonna get pretty much what I like to call an immortal bishop. Okay, the thing with such pieces is that one piece placed in your opponent's half on such a weak square, it's almost as good as having an extra pawn. So with immortal bishop, it's cutting away his defenses totally. He's getting dominated. Now, I would like to play e5 to support the bishop even more, but it would give the knight a square again. Okay, if I have to look for his attempts of counterplay, maybe knight b5, but I can take it at the very least. e5 on the other hand, it's good because it's opening up my bishop. It's an interesting move, nonetheless. Okay, I'm looking for how should we launch the final play? Looking for ways to bring the queen in the attack. It's not super obvious to me. I know we have a great position. I'm just trying to put together the last details. I mean, I would imagine he will try to get rid of my bishop, but then I play e5. So the knight can no longer go for that d5 square. Yeah, I think knight h4, it just feels very natural to try and make room for f4, f5 push. I could also just put it on d2. I guess putting it on d2 is more of like an understandable move since it was preparing to support the bishop, but now that he's allowing me to massage him, I'm gonna go for a Thai massage on b6. The Thai massage will start to kick in pretty quickly. So let's see. The knight is getting to another weak square. So notice that weak squares are actually very easy to spot. You just have to fight for them with one of your own pawns, and your opponent is unable to fight for that same square with his own pawns. And yeah, the knight is gonna land on b6. The knight is gonna be pretty annoying to deal with on that square. Should I go for it right away? I could also consider queen b3 and then queen b6. I don't know, many moves. Let's just put the knight. It's like too good of a knight not to put it there. He has to stay queen close to protect c7. And e6 is his weak pawn because, as I said, it's a pawn that's not protected by other pawns. So it's a sign of weakness. I'm gonna move my bishop, switching the action to e6 and perhaps looking for f4, f5 next. His pieces are completely paralyzed. Notice that he has no moves. Knight b5, it's a good attempt, but I can take the free knight. Should I take the free knight? That's also leading to me taking the free rook. How do we keep the game going? I can maybe play queen d3 or... No, I think I'm just gonna go for the free knight. We can claim that the Thai massage with a knight on b6 actually may have turned into a Swedish massage. I don't know. I'm just throwing out random words without knowing their actual meaning, which is probably not very smart thing to do when a lot of people are watching, but we do get at least a pretty instructive positional squeeze, so I hope you guys remember the important parts of it. How we used the pawn play, got the weak squares, and opponent's pretty much paralyzed. We do currently have... I lost the count, how many extra pieces. And he never really crossed the half of the board, or maybe he did in the opening. So that is also counting for something, I guess. Okay, rook b7. I mean, I can also take on e6. I can also just bring the knight. Let's just bring the knight. Keeping it very simple. Then trade queens. We just play conversion game. Yeah, it's pretty easy. As I said, the thing with these double C pawn structures is that normally when you go wrong, it's because you're just trying to play for some quick attack. While your advantage, it's very big in the long run with the bishop pair and with better central control. So basically, your opponent has really no ways to get active. Like if he ever tries to, his position is simply falling apart. So a lot of times it's just better to do nothing, play some solid moves, wait for him to overextend, and then you just easily collect. Like you notice some weak square like I did, or he goes for some unprotected piece, or something of that nature. Just gonna go little discovery, take this queen to a barbecue, and well, queen finds out that the queen is actually the barbecue. So take that, about to play rook e7, bringing the last pieces, rook g8, but I will take it, some desperado. And yeah, try not to stalemate, ideally. I'm not gonna be mad on you if you stalemate after a good game. But your coach is probably gonna be mad on you. I'm sorry for your coach. He's probably gonna be the one that's kind of not very happy. Will probably be questioning his ability of choosing the right student. In the next game, my opponent played bishop to f5, enabling the pawn storm. But the interesting part is that instead of trading bishops, he simply went back. Let's see what happened. But he steps back, which is a reasonable thing to do. It doesn't really affect us, so you can still trade and put the queen on d3. Gonna be leading to very similar positions to what we're gonna get anyways. Let's start with the knight. I'm gonna do this thing next and then long castle with the standard development for the pawn storm, or la fortuna del peons. I think I said that right. I don't know though. I still need to. I will do it. I will do my research. I will do my research for the next time on the Spanish. So trading, queen d3, and how do you say long castle? We're gonna castle long. Roque. Yeah, I'm gonna stop it. It's getting annoying, I know. Okay, so just taking queen d3 and long castle. There is one little detail that you wanna watch out in these positions because it usually confuses people. I was not about to mention the knight b4 move, but that can be too. You should never be afraid of knight b4 because the queen can always drop back to d2. So I'm happy to see knight b4 because then I can just kick the knight and then the queen regains its place. The queen will be back on the throne. Currently the queen is not on d3, but the queen will be able to move to d3 in the future where it's a good square. Pretty much eyeballing both sides of the board. So he goes knight f6. Now, the tricky idea that I wanted to mention is that quite often black plays bishop e7 targeting the pawn, and that usually confuses people. But the answer should be pretty simple whenever you're dealing with something like that. Just protect your pawn. Bishop g3, castle, and then look for g5 break, and you should be doing pretty well just with that. Knight f6, I'm gonna get rid of this mofo. This mofo was a piece in our half of the board, so we're gonna get rid of it immediately. And it's probably better to long castle, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna put queen on d3. Queen on d3, queen is usually gonna be always there as we're playing the pawn storm, and yeah, expecting maybe bishop d6, maybe bishop e7. Now, another typical rule for the pawn storm is that you want to be able to recapture back on f4 with the knight. And remember that. Make sure to pay attention to the mental anchors that I'm giving away. Because I say you want to take on f4 with the knight in the pawn storm. Because many people confuse it and they think, okay, I want to take on f4 with a knight in Jabava London, I guess. And then they completely mess up the whole rule. You have to just be a little bit more specific. So pay attention to that detail in order to get the rule to work properly. Because I've seen many people just do it super early without any particular reason. But it's clear that this is the, let's say, misconception. So just gonna be castling, and what is our plan? We have a very simple plan in the pawn storm. Pause the video. Think about what can the plan be? To be or not to be? What should we play for? g5, g6. It's our critical pawn break. It is why in the beginning we have not rushed with pushing the h pawn to h5, just because we want to be able to recapture and harass the enemy knight. Important that you only do that after having castle long, so rook is protected. And once the rook is protected, after you castle, then it is going to be time to do g5, g6. So g5 and recapturing, or in case of knight d7, g6. It's quite funny. In this position, knight h5 is the best move indeed. And I have to give some credits for my opponent. He's actually playing really well for his elo. Buenos dias, senor. Very good play. Knight h5. So on knight h5, the idea with this move is that it's a weird move, but it's a blockade, and it's also keeping the h file closed. Good news, it will generally still lead to effortless wins. So I don't want to allow him to trade knight for our bishop. So we're gonna trade for that specific reason. Notice that we were being threatened. We don't take on d6 randomly. So I have a choice to either keep with passive move or trade, and I still keep the momentum. So of course, between the two, I want to keep the momentum. And now we do g6. Setting up a trap. Black cannot take because the queen will be delivering one of the smallest skewers on the chessboard. Almost. Not quite. But obviously he cannot take. And I would be expecting either castlings, f6 or f5. Sometimes, very rarely, queen e7. These would be the main moves. But I have to say, he's really playing well for his elo. Played... the only tell for his elo was that he did this goofy in early knight before attacking my queen. He also played bishop h7, which was a strange move instead of trading. So I don't think he's cheating or anything like that. But he's playing very well for his elo. So opponent is... he's also thinking, so quite good management. A lot of the times, big part of why you're struggling at chess is you don't have patience. As simple as that. You're not using your time to solve problems. Just play moves quickly and then, oh, I blundered, the chess is hard, I'm so bad, or stuff like that. Start telling yourself. When in reality, I look at my student games, the biggest problem is that you start the game with 10 minutes, sometimes even increment, and you finish with more time than what you started with. So watch out for your time management. Okay, after castling, I'm just going to take, so the goal was to open up the file. And he takes with a rook. Now, when he takes with a rook, he creates an immediate threat on the f3 pawn. But before I think about protecting the pawn, which I can do in many easy ways, I'm looking whether there's a way to take advantage of this undefended knight. So queen g6 hits, almost trapping it. And after knight f6, the knight is blocking rook's path. But make sure to not overdo it. This is a common mistake I see in general. It's okay to defend. People have a tendency for over counterattacking. So keep that in mind. Counterattack only if it's obviously very good. So queen g6, it's really restricting my opponent's moves. He has only one move available. So has to move the knight, and the queen also makes progress. And now it's gonna be time to just put a rook on the open file. Which rook do we choose? So whenever you're using, you're preparing to make a rook move, you should try to visualize what are you gonna do with both. Is this rook useful on the h file? Doesn't seem very useful. It's restricted by this pawn. So maybe in the future, in view of some e4 push, this rook can actually be beneficial to protect the pawn. Although, if you make rook dg1, it's probably not a big mistake, since It could also be a potential plan to just double up rooks on the open file. Because we have a pawn. Why is this open file? Because we don't have a white pawn. And the opponent makes a mistake. Goes knight e7, targeting my queen, but sort of failing to spot not the hidden, but the somewhat hidden idea with my last move. So please feel free to pause the video and find a good move for white. The idea is the rook is looking at the enemy king. Kind of in the eye. I mean, maybe like a side eye. It's actually interrupted by the queen, but we can for now take. And wow, he immediately ran away. I was expecting some knight f5 move, and I would have had to go queen g5 with an extra pawn. But this is giving us option. So important to move the queen. Many players would completely forget about the queen. He unpinned. There is check. There is rook g7, queen f6. Probably not clear. I'm just going to have to keep it very simple. I don't have time on the clock. So I'm going to check and I'm going to activate this knight. Try to bring more pieces into the attack. Less than 1 minute on the clock. We got ourselves in a sticky situation. Also, this is interesting, but I'll try to just mate. Usually it's not a good sign when you're desperate to play for mate, but we do have a pretty good position. So knight g6, trying to eliminate the defender of the g8 knight. So if he captures, there's gonna be at least an idea of queen g8 intermezzo. And king d7, yeah, the problem is that you can pause the video again. Find the problem. If I didn't give you the full answer with my arrows. The fork is there, and the fork will provide. But my opponent's position was still probably lost with, even with better play. I was kind of infiltrating, but now all the pieces are ready to break through. Queen is under attack, but more importantly, the pawn on g7 will collapse. So this means our rook will have an easy path to infiltrate. And yeah, you're going to be able to run for a little bit as black, but probably impossible to hide. So let's see. Okay, 20 seconds left. He's thinking. What is he thinking about? What is he thinking? I'm going to take and rook g8 in the position. Also maybe knight e5 in the position. Rook g1. Yeah, at this point he is probably just trying to make confusing moves so that he can milk my clock, but luckily we do have genuinely all of our pieces into the attack, so that should probably help. Maybe rook g8 was faster. Knight e5, I mean tempo on the queen cannot be bad either. Okay, some queen h5 check. Just don't panic. He has to block with a knight or king f8. And ceci cela. Queen f7. C'est la vie. Hasta la vida. Okay. Okay. He's gonna make me wait for it. He's gonna make me work for it. Opponent looking for the last bullet, but everything he has is an empty bottle of tequila next to a revolver, which is also happening to be empty. So not gonna be it this time. Miguel. His name is not Miguel, but I just called him Miguel. I think he played like Miguel. All right. Probably the most difficult move of the game was queen g6. Let's just have a look for example's sake. Yeah, queen g6 apparently only moved to keep the initiative. So I have f4, simple defensive idea to not lose a pawn. E4 was interesting move, but the problem I think it's that it allows knight f4 to activate. Not even knight f4. Just he can double up and my pawn is weak. But queen g6 was very good because it's forcing his knight on a passive square and we also infiltrate. So this is a threat. It's not so easy to defend. I have e4, e5 ideas. I have knight f4 idea. I have simple idea to double up. So white definitely gets some attack after opening up that file. So remember, bishop outside the pawn chain. We play the pawn storm. And queen goes to d3. No need to be afraid of nonsense knights. Take back on f4 with a knight. Or if it doesn't come down to that, g5, g6 should be your best friend. You had no best friend while entering this video. Now you leave the video with a best friend. Subscribe to the channel. And with that, we can move on to the following game. Now, in the next game, my opponent played a setup with pawn to e6. Closing the light square bishop, meaning that we no longer pawn storm. And after the normal developing moves, he surprised me by playing the move e5. Let's see what happened. e5, which I think it's not a miscalculation by him, although it could be. It's maybe just a sign of, it could also be just a sign of desperation that he wants to activate the light square bishop, so he's trying to sacrifice the pawn. Okay, white has technically already a winning advantage, but it's gonna be quite a long way to go to show you the conversion. So very important. I have many ways to play this. I think I'm just gonna take with a knight, keep smooth structure. It's also interesting to take with a pawn and then knight d5. Could be a nice trick to lure his queen into bishop h7 tactic. And then we can collect him. But I'm just gonna keep it very smooth. I'm gonna avoid the double pawns. And we're gonna try to exchange all the pieces and go to an extra pawn endgame. So let's see. Again, I can do that, but avoid double pawns unless you have a good reason to allow them. That's a pretty accurate rule, I would say, to follow. And let's see, he could do bishop g4, knight g4, or bishop d6. Those would be the moves that I'm expecting. He goes for the bishop, where I have many moves. I could do pawn to f3 to keep up the tempo. I could do queen e2, develop and connect rooks. I could also play, let's say, bishop e2. Offering a trade, he could go back. Okay, I like f3 just because it keeps the momentum. You want to be a bit careful not to weaken e3, but I don't think my opponent can exploit it here, so I'd prefer to keep the momentum. Expecting bishop back to h5 or e6. Those would be candidate moves here. And yeah, I don't think if he was going h5, I don't think we have to play g4. It would be a little bit overly aggressive. I think it's possible, but unnecessary. So he goes bishop to e6. All right, he's probably going to play with c5 next, try to hit the center, I'd imagine. So because he wants to play c5, I'd like to have c3 move to protect the center and give the bishop a square. So I think it's a good time to start maneuvering the knight. Knight b5 possible as an aggressive move, but I think just knight e2 good as well. Prepare c3, maybe the knight is going to f4. Okay, so he's doing rook c8, preparing that idea. Interesting. Okay, we have two moves. I think I'm just gonna play c3. Useful move, just wait a bit, see what he wants to do. The problem with knight f4, although tempting move, it kind of traps our bishop on e5. So I'd probably prefer the knight g3, knight f5 idea over it. Okay, opponent plays b6, preparing some c5, and I guess trying to recapture with a pawn. It's interesting position. I don't have that many ways to offer trades. I can develop my queen with a tempo. It's not so easy for him to defend. Okay, you know what? Now, because he has played b6, I can try to use that as a hook. a4, a5, activate the rook. I could also just do e4, play in the center. Yeah, let's do e4. I think I kind of like e4. Pretty much justifying the previous play as well. It's just that the problem with e4, it allows knight g4. I have bishop back. Yeah, let's do e4. I'm just gonna push the extra pawn pretty much. This is the extra pawn, the pawn on the e file. I think it's sensible to try to make some use of it. Possible interesting strategic idea that we have is bishop f6 and e5. So it's not so natural to give up bishop for a knight, but I think it's a great tool that we can use here to pretty much get the pawns rolling super fast. Because he's gonna be forced to take back with a bishop. Opening your king doesn't make sense. And now I get e5, tempo move, bishop activation, plus looking to do f4 on the very next move, kind of no matter where the bishop goes. I expect to go back. f4, f5 idea. So notice that we have pretty nice setup with pawns on the opposite color of our bishop. So, okay. Opponent goes cd. I can recapture knight or pawn. Usually pawn is the simplest, but that would give him time to block the position with f5. So it could actually be very interesting just to take with the knight, activating and kind of saying that we're knocking at his door on the next move with f5, no matter what he does. Very important move here, I think. Because pawn takes f5, we're better, but he has kind of like a difficult position to penetrate. But after knight takes, notice that we're taking away that idea completely. Now, suddenly the pawn must babysit the bishop, and there is genuinely no way to stop f5. I have a feeling he may try to play g6. Oh no, never mind. He just went queen d7, which, yeah, I think it's nothing but miscalculation. Because now f5 gets to trap the bishop and win a piece. Can take it right away, can also postpone it because the bishop is not threatening to run away. And okay, now important to collect in the most efficient way. Because I can take with a knight, but you wanna maximize your advantage if possible. So just little skewer, take with a bishop, catch queen and rook on the same diagonal. And now just playing the conversion game is just gonna be rather simple. Take the rook, put queen on open file, bring the rook, and I guess look for either open up more lines with e6 or put a knight on f5 with queen g4. Threatening mate or just forcing exchanges. Okay, queen c7. Targeting the pawn, but we can take our rook. Takes with the queen. Okay, I can maybe start with knight f5, tempo move. Knight f5 gives him check. Maybe I don't want to give him check, although not like it matters much. Let's play queen f3, just target the pawn, make room to bring the kind of last piece into the game, and keep it simple. So queen c7, I'm gonna defend my pawn by capturing his pawn, which is probably something that was missed. And Next up, we could just start doubling up on the f-file. The focus point being f7 because it's a pawn that cannot be protected by other pawns and it's also pinned. So this pawn is quite stuck and vulnerable. So I'm just going to start by playing rook f3. Rook f3 giving it some ideas to rook lift in case we need, but to be honest, rook on any square was quite decent. Rook f3 just sort of standard. Okay, a5. I can take the pawn, but focus on f7. Focus on the king. Yeah, I place b4, but we're gonna have a pretty nice puzzle rush finale. Because, well, there's gonna be an easy mate, but pause the video and try to find the prettier one. You get extra points if you play the prettier mate, because it's gonna be like in the puzzle rush. So, queen e8, boo, that's boring. Queen f8, just like in the puzzle rush. And then you get the back anchor. Okay, welcome back everybody. Getting a white game against an Indonesian opponent, it seems. And okay, d4, d5. That is good news because it means that we can play the Jubava London. And wow, bishop to f5. I genuinely had this in previous game as well. So important to not rush with the bishop. So as a rule of thumb, while you're playing Jubava London, whenever bishop goes on f5, that triggers the f3 move. Similarly on bishop g4 as well. Even better, it comes with a tempo. And after e6, the key move is to watch out for e4. So on f3, best move for opponent is knight f6, fighting for e4 square, where you have to go bishop f4 and push. But on e6, that allows e4. Targeting the bishop, and now a very common mistake. Capture. Already white is close to winning, which is why this opening is so insanely good. Dude, seriously. I'm not hyping this shit up. It's move 4. White is borderline close to completely winning just because we have 2 extra pawns in the center. So this is the center. We have 2 pawns. Black has 0. That's pretty bad. And we have very simple plan as well. So not only good possession, but also it's kind of playing itself. Knight goes to f3. Also, by the way, no need to be afraid of the check, because just g3 and then pick up the bishop. Queen h4 is common blunder there. We have knight f3, bishop d3, short castle, e5 push. Keep this in mind, and just a very easy game. No need to do any a3. That would be a waste of time. Just follow this almost blindly. Not blindly, you always want to think while you're playing chess, but you can almost do it without thinking. It's just this good. So he pins. Now knight f6 should be, let's say, critical idea whether he wants to take the pawn on e4 or not. But many people get scared of allowing e5, so many people actually even just put knight on e7 or they move the bishop. So opponent goes for the pin. Now, at first glance, you want to look for the idea. He wants bishop takes on f3, removing defender of the d4 pawn. But because we're already having such a big lead in development, it really makes sense to sacrifice the pawn just to get even a bigger lead in development. I can also just do the simple move, bishop e3 to protect, but come on. Guys, seriously, come on. We have to go for the attack. We have to attack. Take and take. Taking on d4 right away, it's a mistake. It's losing a piece. Sadly, opponent doesn't enter that line. I wanted to show queen d4, bishop e3. He has to put queen to protect f7. So queen d7 I was expecting, but oof, many good moves there. Rook a d1, e5 I'm considering. We'll have a look after the game, but I'm expecting white to be completely winning in that position. Bishop c3, though, we have no worries whatsoever because we have good double pawns. So, few words about double pawns. People in general see double pawns as something negative, which is not the case. Double pawns can be great since it's improving your control over the center. It's allowing me to use an open file. The only, let's say, situation where I would view double pawns as potentially a weakness is if they are doubled and isolated. Not the case. If my pawn was, if I had no D pawn, then they would be isolated. But no, they're close to this guy, so no isolation. In the other case, when double pawns can be a weakness is if they are close to the king. So let's say you have your king open. But now this is noticed that double pawn makes position to be perfect for white. And next up, I can do e5, although I'd prefer it with a tempo. So I'm gonna wait a bit. I can start rook b1 as well. Can also play queen e1 to one pin. Let's do rook b1. So tempo move, targeting unprotected pawn. Pretty much forcing a reaction from my opponent, and already b6 could be resignation. Just b6 could be resignation, and I'm not exaggerating. You can pause the video and try to find the reason why b6 is resignation. Problem is that it's an unprotected knight and then there is gonna be a pin. So bishop b5 with the opportunity to double down on the pin on the next move with d5. Just collecting the knight. That would be an easy win. However, it would make the video a bit less interesting. So I'm just gonna play simple move, queen e1. Let's say you just missed free win, whatever. How does the game normally go? What should be the plan? So the queen unpins and has a pretty nice square on g3. I'm keeping options for the bishop. The bishop is already super active on c1. Bishop is a half-developed piece on initial square. You don't need to worry about it too much, even in this situation. Just it has so much pressure. And the way my opponent is playing, he's protecting the undefended knight. It's kind of really asking me to push. I don't want to go for push. I want to play more strategic. I could also do this interesting idea to play rook b5. Get the tempo. I think I'm just going to go simple stuff. Just queen g3 like I promised. Queen goes to g3. Eyeballing c7 as well. Do not underestimate pawn on c7 as a weakness. It can be a big weakness. My bishop could attack it. And wow, he goes long castle. Speaking of unexpected moves, yeah, well, he's gambiting the pawn on g7. I'm not 100% sure that I want to take it. Because then after knight e7, rook g8, we do have an extra pawn, but he might get some annoying play. Can I just go for something like knight e5? Knight e5, targeting these bad boys, and the point is to force him into taking. And I get to take with the queen, and I might be able to bring my queen to the attack. Oh, I have queen a5 in that position. Ah, this is so pretty. Ah, look at this. We might get a bishop mate. So yeah, we're forcing him to take. Attacking the bishop, and okay, he gives me the bishop. I'm not taking the bishop. That's the best move, but I wanted to show you this idea. To play queen a5. He has king b7 though. Is it as strong as it looks? I can also do queen c5. But queen c5 doesn't have like a follow-up. I think it's nice to get the queen over and then do a4, a5. I cannot decide. I want to do queen a5. Queen a5, king b8. Bishop f4. Ah, that's how I play it. Look at this. So queen a5. Please don't take it. Go king v8. He cannot take the queen because of the mate. Oh, this is so funny. Oh, by the way, he had queen takes on d4 check. That was kind of making it a mess. Oh my god, what a clown game.